Oh, sorry. Just turn the recording on.
Got it. So yeah, a little bit of the background. I spent almost my entire career with CAL FIRE. Worked my way up from a seasonal firefighter, registered professional forester, and up through both resource management and fire protection in CAL FIRE, and ultimately spent my last 8 years as the chief and the director of CAL FIRE. Retired at the end of 2018 and have been working for the last 5 years, a number of projects, doing some consulting work, but the most fruitful piece has really been working in El Dorado County, both as the chair of the El Dorado County Fire Safe Council, but also now working as a retiree or an annuitant part-time with the County of El Dorado, establishing and building this Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resilience, which is really kind of the cornerstone of what I wanted to share with folks tonight. So with that, I've got kind of a brief PowerPoint I will walk through, and if Corey can help me, tell me if I make sure I'm working, but I'm going to share my screen and make sure everyone can see that.
Here you go.
Excellent. All right. So again, Ken Pimlott, retired chief of CAL FIRE, and really wanted to share. This really started, and we've all lived through it here in California in the last decade, as we've seen our fire challenge increase and seeing these catastrophic wildfires. Obviously, El Dorado County was not exempt from that. It experienced the King Fire and a number of other fires over the last decade. But it was the Caldor Fire in August and September in 2021 that really brought home the reality to the county that this was one of 2 fires that year that burned completely across the Sierra Crest, and in the case of Caldor, of course, burned into Lake Tahoe from the west slope. So the Board of Supervisors convened during the fire and directed the Chief Administrative Officer, Don Ashton at the time, to really look at a way to collaborate on lessons learned, define what the funding streams are for resources that are available to really help ramp up the county's participation and engagement in preparing for wildfires, and then establish a working group, at the time called the Vegetation Management and Resiliency Working Group. But the county felt very strongly that it knew that a lot of work has been going on, but it really needed to step up its game in the response to the kinds of fires that we're seeing. So the Chief Administrative Officer established a working group. He kept it very small. This is not a commissioned working group that's under the Brown Act. This is an informal working group that advises the Chief Administrative Officer on issues and policy issues and discussion related to wildfire preparedness. He wanted to keep it small and keep it framed around those agencies and organizations that are really directly responsible for wildfire mitigation and preparedness. And so you can see from the list that's here, it was really limited to the Chief Administrative Office, the El Dorado County Fire Safe Council, CAL FIRE, the local El Dorado National Forests, the Fire Chiefs Association representing the fire districts in the county, along with their fire prevention officers, and our 2 resource conservation districts on the west slope, El Dorado and Georgetown. As this progressed, we also added the Lake Tahoe Fire and Fuels team to bring in the Lake Tahoe Basin Coordination, which tends to be, even though it's in the same county, has its own efforts going on with its other partners in the basin. And then ultimately, the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department Emergency Services section, who are responsible for the emergency preparedness and the Emergency Operations Center and all of that. So this group started convening every 2 weeks and ultimately put together a set of recommendations back to the Board of Supervisors and the CAO. And these are really framed around really updating the county's strategic plan at the highest level to say we really need to add a theme that says El Dorado County needs to be a wildfire prepared and resilient county. And it developed tasks directly under that theme, a theme that had never been in the county's strategic plan prior. And with that, they wanted to coordinate funding streams. They wanted to organize, and we were seeing lots of different organizations applying for the same grants, competing for these. We had areas that weren't getting any grant funding because there was nobody championing those projects. And so they wanted a process. The recommendation was we need a process that helps facilitate that coordination. Break down the silos. Lots of good work going on, but over here, the Fire Safe Council is doing work. Over here, the Resource Conservation District is, but no one's really aligned into one big planning effort. Common communications, probably one of the #1 challenges that the working group recommended back for resolution with the board was a unified effort in joint messaging, and not just sharing each other's Facebook posts, but something that's truly building messaging together on these joint projects and things where we're collaborating, almost like a joint information center, if you will, for folks that are engaged in emergency management. And then the key one was establishing what became the Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resilience. And this has really been the cornerstone of all of this. So since day one, since late fall of 2021, this coordination group has been meeting without exception almost every 2 weeks and bringing forward issues. And along with that, the county has been building within the within the Chief Administrative Office, this Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resilience. And it, again, as the slide says, it was for not the county not to take over and dictate to the partners, the organizations, what they're doing, but to truly serve as that glue, bringing together these groups, facilitate the coordination on topics and programs related to wildfire preparedness and mitigation, and provide that day-to-day staff support for wildfire mitigation, both within the county, but then also supporting the members of the coordination group on key issues. And starting out any new program, certainly at any level in government, but certainly at the county level, at the local government level, requires a lot of diligence and justification, and really proving the proof, really providing that proof of concept as to what this office was really going to do to better wildfire preparedness in the county. And as I started calling around and talking to partners in other counties, talking to CAL FIRE, no one was really doing this yet. There was no real model for us to look at to say, well, this is how we set up a program in our county to do all of these things. Everyone had different approaches, different thoughts. And so we really had to build this from scratch as to what we felt that our needs were to meet our programs. So started very small, an analyst in the program, me working as a retiree, as a principal management analyst, and working directly for the CAO's office to really start fleshing this out. But ultimately, the key recommendation or process between the working group and the office that was established was to prepare a wildfire strategy. We recognized early on there are lots of plans. CAL FIRE has a unit fire plan. There's the local hazard mitigation plan. There's the safety element of the general plan. We have several community wildfire protection plans, one on the West Slope and one in the Tahoe Basin, and several smaller ones scattered around. Realized early on that what we needed was a higher level strategy to tie all of this together. All of our plans were happening independent of each other. All this work and effort was happening independent. So what we needed was just one sort of overarching roadmap that ties all of that together and provides the guidance as to how collectively, as partners in the county, we were going to work on wildfire mitigation collectively. So the Board of Supervisors adopted the wildfire strategy in August of 2023, so just last summer. And the tenets of that strategy are basically defined, and there were 7 key areas. We wanted a public outreach element. We wanted which again we'll talk about. We wanted a policy element that worked on issues like new ordinances, how we address reviewing legislation, things where we wanted to have governance related sort of matters that we could make recommendations to the decision makers. Data management and sharing. How do we get all of that together? And then share it both internally with stakeholders, but also externally with the public. And then funding coordination, big piece. Our fire safe councils, and we have 31 associate fire safe councils now in El Dorado County under the umbrella of the broader County Fire Safe Council. Everyone's interested in grants. Everyone wants to do things, and they're all competing for the same funding, and they're competing for the same resources, the Department of Transportation resources, CAL FIRE, everybody wants help, and they're all competing for a limited amount of resource. And we're all within the same county, working together. So this idea is, how do we coordinate funding so that we leverage the best resources and put the best foot forward? And then project coordination. On the West Slope, lots of work going on. The Resource Conservation District does a yeoman's amount of the work in our Western Slope to be the project manager for so many other projects. But there's a lot happening in different aspects, particularly post Caldor fire, where you've got a large recovery effort going on from the fire. You've got the National Forest, which is working forward on recovery of multiple burn areas, at the same time trying to move forward, with a forest management plan and aspects of that to try to implement projects on the ground. And then the Tahoe Basin. Again, everyone focuses on the West Slope of the county, but Lake Tahoe Basin has been coordinating work, particularly since the Angora fire, several decades ago, now almost 2007. And they're working with other partners. So all of this, how do we tie in what's going on in the basin with the West Slope? So we're in a unified approach. So that was the key part of the strategy, was to make that happen. And so just some examples of what we're doing underneath all of these 7 pieces. We are doing a comprehensive update to our community wildfire protection plan for the West Slope, while at the same time the basin is updating theirs. And this is bringing in a comprehensive hazard and risk assessment, identifying where the gaps are in our existing plan, looking at setting priorities, and then again, coordinating with these other planning efforts. As I mentioned, our hazard mitigation plan effort, CAL FIRE, and the safety element, which is under the planning and building department. All of these things are happening right now at the same time, different phases, but they're all talking to each other, so that we're aligned with where the risks are, priorities, and the kinds of projects that we're doing. So this process, we're just undertaking the update as we speak. Data management and sharing. We heard number 1 from our stakeholders that they wanted the county to be the data hub relative to this area of subject matter, wildfire mitigation and preparedness. So there's a working group that's been established between the various GIS programs around the county, whether it's the Forest Service, CAL FIRE, the Resource Conservation District, the Water Agency, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, and many others are coming to the table and talking about how to have data sharing and the governance of that. But we also built an externally facing mapping tool. So anybody now can log on to the Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resilience website, within the county website, and locate this mapping tool. And it continues to be improved, but it allows anyone to identify where their fire safe council is, fire districts, congressional boundaries, anything that may be relevant and appropriate when you're planning or looking at wildfire mitigation. We're starting to populate that information in this, hopefully, over time, more user-friendly sort of format. But ultimately, you can draw a project, you can identify, parcels, and to really help our fire safe councils and our other community members start to really look at how things overlay on the ground and start talking about projects. And ultimately, we're starting to add in project information. So as we put projects together, as our CWPP is completed and we're able to start tracking through a dashboard project progress, all of that will be available as data layers that will be publicly accessible through our online mapping tool. And then Firewise communities, and we'll talk in a minute about how that impacts with insurance and what we're doing with all of that. But Firewise, the Firewise community program, and I think probably everyone's heard about that, or at least heard the words. And prior to it being a factor in helping with insurability, if you will, of a property, it was just one of those things that we talked about in wildfire prevention as a good thing for a community to do, to organize, identify projects, put an action plan together, work through those projects, perform a risk assessment in your community, and all those things would help educate community members on all those things we talk about: defensible space, home hardening, community supported kinds of projects to reduce the risk. it didn't land anywhere in El Dorado County. CAL FIRE coordinates it for the National Fire Protection Association, but there was no real assistance on the ground to help communities become one. And so the county now has brought that up into its program in coordination with CAL FIRE. So anywhere in the county, you can log on, go to our website, the county's website, and you can determine who your coordinator is, whether you're in the basin, on the West Slope. And there's a process to get people into the system to provide technical assistance, provide maps. We provide the maps for communities that are trying to build their firewise and identify their boundaries. All of that is now being coordinated at the county with CAL FIRE. And I talked about public outreach. This has been sort of the biggest challenge. No one agency has its own to the level that they would like a public outreach programs. And so we put together a working group. CAL FIRE happens to be leading this working group for all of us. But we're taking a unified approach. We're developing messaging together. So we want to talk about different projects or initiatives, defensible space, how we're doing that together. That's all being developed together, or at least we're really working towards that. And then the Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resilience, OWOPR, as we affectionately refer to it, is now sort of hosting those materials and sort of being the staff support to that effort. Defensible Space Program. This has, I think, become really the cornerstone of our where we've dug in and are cutting our teeth on collaboration. Our emphasis is on education. We coordinate with the Fire Safe Council. We have assistance programs that are becoming more and more robustly funded, if that's the right phrase, with different grants to provide defensible space assistance, chipping, and now hazard tree removal to our disadvantaged community members, senior citizens, low income, veterans, disabled. And so we provide that assistance, and it's coordinated. So as our fire districts are doing inspections, CAL FIRE or the county, everyone has the same set of materials to share with our community members. We've trained over 70 volunteer defensible space evaluators at our fire safe councils in a partnership between these same set of organizations. And those folks are now doing voluntary defensible space evaluations for anyone in the county that requests that. And as of next week, those assessments we're hoping our folks will start using the state's field map programs. We'll be able to capture all that data electronically and capture all of that to share with our community and to share with the programs in Sacramento and around the county. Defensible space is being highlighted through a pilot program. El Dorado County was one of 6 counties picked by the state's California Wildfire Mitigation Program. We were awarded $25 million from FEMA and a little bit from the state of California with a small match from El Dorado County to treat 525 homes in the Weber Creek area, sort of in the southern end of Placerville and an unincorporated area. Defensible space and home hardening. Each one of those 525 homes will have an assessment and be given a plan. And if they choose to participate in the program, they will receive up to at least $40,000 of work per home on defensible space and home hardening. This is going to be taking place over the course of the next 3 to 4 years. We're currently in the environmental review process to get clearance to start work on actually doing, swinging hammers and doing the upgrades. And I know all of this is being done, of course, because we want our communities, our county to be more wildfire resilient. We want to protect lives and property and infrastructure. But in the course of doing all this work, of course, we recognize insurance is what's driving most folks' concern right now with the wildfire challenge and the ability not only to just get insurance, but to have that insurance it's affordable. And so we have been coordinating and sharing any information that we can and providing that on our website. But we've really been working directly underneath and following the insurance commissioners, the Department of Insurance Safer from Wildfires program. And this is key. There are a number of elements if you meet those things, not only as a homeowner, but as a county, you start looking at, you can receive insurance discounts potentially from your provider. the kinds of things that they're looking at under this initiative, Safer from Wildfire, is your home built of ignition resistant construction. And that's your Class A fire resistant roof, your vents that are an eighth of an inch or in size in terms of the meshing, windows that are reflect the heat, and then of course boxed eaves. And so it's just those kinds of construction, siding, and there are a whole list of things that as you improve your structure, you can get a rating and be more susceptible to better rates potentially. Easy one, compliance with state and local defensible space laws. That's why we are so forward thinking with getting our defensible space program on the ground. That doesn't just mean enforcing state and local ordinances. It means really focusing on education and providing the resources to our community members to get this work done so that they can show their insurance provider. Moving buildings and sheds away from the structures. There's things you can do on the ground. If you show that you don't have a tough shed or something within 30 feet, those are the kinds of things you can make an appreciable difference. Your neighborhood's becoming Firewise. I think we have over 50 Firewise communities in the county now. If you become Firewise certified, which takes some effort, again, if you can receive a discount from your insurance provider. And then lastly, and this is the biggest lift, it's a city, county, or a local district being a fire risk reduction community. And for a county or a municipality, there's a fairly robust list of things that have to happen. And the county or the city has to do this on behalf of all of their residents, or they will not qualify for this piece. And this is very significant. It's adopting fire hazard severity zone maps that CAL FIRE prepares. It is ensuring that all of your tentative track maps are approved by a local fire official, the fire plan component, and all of those are submitted to the Board of Forestry back to 2013. Your safety element of your general plan has to be meet the current standards and requirements of a safety element, which includes a number of new elements relative to evacuation and wildfire preparedness. Those last two pieces, the providing the planning documents and the land use planning documents and the safety element, is where El Dorado County has been spending most of its effort in the last 6 months. We literally turned in our application for our safety element, our draft safety element, last week, and it is being moved forward to the Board of Forestry for consideration. But all of this has to happen on a cycle. April 1st is the deadline for 2024 to be recognized as a fire risk reduction community. And so you have to have all this work done ahead of time. And I know many folks are working hard to get their communities there. We'll see. There is no guarantee that El Dorado County will meet the bar this go around. If we don't, right now we have to wait 2 more years. But we're working diligently to try to get there and get our processes up to where they need to be. So, and that we're waiting. Everybody is waiting for more information from the insurance commissioner as these things play out. So our best opportunity is to share information for our community members and then do all the things we can do to provide the resources and the tools to meet these requirements of Safer from Wildfire so that folks have a chance to at least, look at potential opportunities for discounts. So there's a lot going on. We could go on really all night, but I wanted to stop there. Those are really the core things that we're working on right now to really change the way El Dorado County's been doing in engaging in wildfire preparedness and have the county stand out more as a leader in helping facilitate this where it really hasn't before. And it's being well received. It's just a new way of doing things. And of course, there's growing pains with that as we go forward. So with that, I'll stop there and turn it back to Corey or the group.
Great, Ken, that was a great overview. I appreciate it. A reminder to everybody that if you have a question, you can pose it on Q&A, and then I can squeeze that in as possible. And so the first question was, is this deck something that you can share with the people that are attending, Ken?
The slideshow, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll figure out a way to make it available. Okay, and then it was a follow-up question of essentially, how do you find out about how these fire maps are made? And what prompted the question was seeing a small area in yellow, meaning low, I guess, surrounded by an area in orange, meaning moderate. And they're like, how can you be surrounded by and be lower than what's around you?
It's a there's a process that goes into it, and I'm sure there's many on here that were following it this last year. So that the state law and the short version of this is the state law requires that CAL FIRE, Office of the State Fire Marshal's Office, prepare fire hazard severity zone maps that designate what these hazards are on the ground. And the challenge, and the last set of maps we were working with were approved in 2007. Over the last, 12 years, they have been working on updating those maps. And the challenge with that is that a lot's happened since those first maps were done. Weather parameters have changed. We realized that the climate's changing. So they took a long time to get this last set of maps out. The last set of maps were just updated, within the last month. They'll take effect April 1st. The Office of Administrative Law approved those. Significant changes in many, many counties in the rural parts of California. El Dorado County moved up from high to very high, about 22%. So we're seeing much more of the dark red, if you will. It's based on, it's not a perfect science, and it's not down to the 3 millimeter scale. They look at the landscape, they look at weather patterns, they look at vegetation, they look at topography, and what would that look like absent any mitigation? Because if mitigation isn't happening, it's going to come right back to this level of hazard. You can't change the hazard, but you can change the risk. And so it oftentimes looks odd that you've got a lower or a moderate right next to a high, and then over here you've got another low. But they're looking at it from what's on the ground, what's potentially on the ground based on, again, vegetation, weather patterns, all of that. But it's not perfect if you're the one sitting on the ground and potentially looking right across the street. At this point, there's no way to change that. I mean, they've been going through a public comment period for the last year. They made some revisions, but the maps are and will be what they are effective April 1st. The implications are they're really designed for land use planning. The CAL FIRE's very high fire hazard severity maps are designed for land use planning officials to be able to make decisions based on the fire threat as we're conditioning communities, buildings, new construction. They are not driving insurance rates. What's driving insurance are the maps that the insurance companies are commissioning to have done that they do separately through their fire risk modeling. And the insurance commissioner has been very clear about that relative to the maps. So
great. There's also a couple of questions about how does someone go about getting a defensible space assessment?
Yeah, there's a number of ways to do that. Depending on where in El Dorado County, the way we have it set up is you can contact our fire safe, any of our associate fire safe councils, or the umbrella fire safe council, and they will direct you to who's available in your area to come out and do a voluntary assessment. You can contact CAL FIRE. And they have a defensible space program where they have planned inspections they're doing, but they also help homeowners with that. You can contact the County Office of Wildfire Preparedness. We have a defensible space inspection program under our ordinance and have folks that can come out and do that. And then also our local fire districts will do that. And we are rolling all this up into one big plan. We know where every agency is doing their inspections every year. We're planning those together so that we're not overlapping. We're really trying to spread the wealth across the county. So we're trying to reach 7,000 to 8,000 homeowners a year collectively with our programs.
Great. There's a couple of questions, but I think we'll let some of the supervisors we invited chime in first. So we have Gary Bradford from Yuba County. We have Rosemarie Smallcombe from Mariposa County and Jaron Brandon from Tuolumne County, all of which have serious interest in fire prevention. Gary, I know you have some time constraints, so how about you kick it off here?
Great, thank you very much. So I'm a Yuba County supervisor, and I represent the southern part of the county. Yuba County is about half in the Sierra Nevada and about half on the Sacramento Valley floor. I also serve as vice chair of the Yuba Water Agency, and the Yuba Water Agency was created back in 1959 predominantly to provide reliable water supply and flood protection for the residents of Yuba County. The board is made up of the 5 county supervisors in addition to 2 elected officials. We own and operate New Bullards Bar Reservoir, which is about a 1 million acre-foot reservoir, and provide irrigation water to 8 irrigation districts in the county. We also own and operate a hydroelectric facility, several actually, that produce enough hydroelectric power for about 400,000 California households. It's Yuba Water Agency that's actually leading the forest restoration efforts in Yuba County and in the Yuba River watershed upstream of Yuba County. Looking at recent mega fires that have burned in our areas, like the Camp Fire in 2018 and the North Complex Fire in 2020, it's really scary to see just how close they got to us in Yuba County. We've honestly been very lucky. The Yuba River watershed has many of the same characteristics as the neighboring Feather River watershed, which is where the North Complex burned, nearly 320,000 acres. So why would a water agency care about forest restoration? And stakes are high if a mega fire came through our area. Wildfire is a huge threat to our reservoir, New Bullards Bar. We would have a lot of debris in the reservoir from runoff. Obviously, the facilities itself, the hydroelectric facility, which is our primary source of revenue, and not to mention the threat to our local communities and to the environment. Yuba Water Agency actually serves the exact same constituency as the Board of Supervisors. The boundary for Yuba Water Agency is, in fact, the county as a whole, and so we serve the same people. So in 2017, a financial nonprofit called Blue Forest approached us with a new creative financing tool to help with forest management. It's called the Forest Resiliency Bond, and we saw a great opportunity in this. And so the way this works is Forest Resiliency Bond leverages public and private investment from groups like insurance companies, the Rockefeller Foundation, and others to implement forest restoration at a much faster pace and scale than traditional financing, right? Often the challenge with implementing forest management projects, in addition to, of course, boots on the ground, is the financing to get those projects started. So in this case, the investors put up the initial funding, and then they're paid back over time with interest by those that benefit from the project. So in our case, Yuba Water is considered a beneficiary because it offsets, obviously, potential costs that we would have to incur should a wildfire occur within our watershed. In addition to that, we believe there are also water quantity benefits potentially by doing forest management. So that's one of the things we're studying, but we believe that by having a healthier forest, we can actually get more water into our reservoir. And so we piloted the first ever Forest Resiliency Bond with a $1.5 million investment from our water agency, and that leveraged $4 million in capital, initial capital from those other kinds of partners that I mentioned. And then we followed that up with another $6 million investment to leverage $25 million. So fast forward to today, and the partnership with Blue Forest is paying off big time for us in Yuba County. Our initial 15,000 acre project is on track to be completed 6 years earlier than it was traditionally financed, and all the investors have been paid back. We've helped establish a diverse 9-member group called the North Yuba Forest Partnership, which has now leveraged more than $178 million in funds to advance forest treatment and reduce catastrophic wildfire risk in the Yuba watershed. And so essentially by kind of jumping out early on and proving that we could do projects like this, we've been in line to get additional state and federal funding to do more. And so really just kind of in summary, all that's to say is that our initial $1.5 million investment just a few years ago has turned into an $178 million investment and a partnership that is helping us do more and more in the watershed all the time. And so that's what's going on in Yuba County. And of course, taking care of our forests is the best way to prevent destructive wildfires in our communities.
Great. Okay, let's see. Rosemarie, I know you have a fair amount of past history working with Ken. How about you take it off next? Oh, you got to unmute yourself.
There we go. So not to embarrass Ken, but I will tell you that I was sworn in as a county supervisor at the beginning in January of 2015. And two of my constituents came up like in early March and said, we want you to get the governor to declare a disaster on tree mortality. I came out of private industry, so I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to do that, but we'll figure it out. And I worked with our Office of Emergency Services. They worked with the California Office of Emergency Services. I talked to a lot of my colleagues. And at the end of the day, I guess I just want to say that for the 10 high hazard counties, which I don't know that that included Yuba, but for sure it included Tuolumne and several other counties running up and down the Sierra Nevada. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to Ken and to Mark Ghilarducci for creating the task force that was so important in helping us address tree mortality in our counties, but then also finding funding so that we could meet the match requirement under the California Disaster Assistance Act. So, there aren't too many weeks that go by that I don't thank Ken Pimlott for his partnership to our counties in reducing our wildfire risk. I am Rosemarie Smallcombe. I am a county supervisor. As I mentioned, I've been in office for a while. Just to help you locate where we're at, 40% of Yosemite National Park is in Mariposa County, and all of that 40% is in my district, along with quite a bit of the other geographic area of Mariposa County. And I think what I'll do is I will ask Ken a question, and maybe some of my colleagues here, about how we can coordinate across counties with respect to what Ken is doing. What I'll mention is that, again, going back to the work that we did in the early days with CAL FIRE and Cal OES, it was my understanding that we needed to create a local tree mortality response committee, right? So at the state level, the task force had the state agencies and federal agencies. At the local level, we brought in representatives from our national forests and CAL FIRE and so on. And once we had expended all the money to remove all the dead trees around our county roads and other facilities like libraries and so on. The question was, what do we do with this legacy organization? And we decided to turn it into MCFAC, which is the Mariposa County Fire Advisory Committee. And a number of things that you talked about, Ken, are the same sorts of things that we did, right? Because as the message came through loud and clear with respect to tree mortality, this calamity that is our forested landscape cannot be addressed by any single agency. So, coming together with the Forest Service, the Park Service, Water, federal and state, CAL FIRE, all that sort of thing, we knew that we had to work together, and we know that we have to continue to work together. So the collaboration that Ken mentioned, the combining of plans. When I started, we had, the park had its plan, and this Forest Service had that plan, and it was like, wait a second, folks. We have to come together and pull those plans into something that we can actually work to. And and I'll mention that week before last, Gary and I were in Washington, D.C. at the National Association of Counties meeting, and they had I'm looking for the name of it, won't find it quickly, but they had a panel on disasters and the relationship to insurance. And I guess what I'll say, and then I'll turn it back over to Ken and any of my colleagues that want to chime in. it is very clear that that insurance companies are looking at risk across the whole country, right? So whether it's a tornado in Florida or hurricane in Florida, tornado in the Midwest, ice storms in the Northeast, that's what's driving increased insurance rates, and we need to step up at a county level, at a state level, and think about how, as Ken was suggesting, how do we go about reducing that risk? And because we don't want to be left out, and there is an organization, there are a couple organizations that have started a program called they started Fortify Alabama, and I'm not sure, I didn't really get the risk, but it had something to do with tying down roofs. So maybe it was, I don't know, hurricanes or tornadoes. But the insurance industry, the Building Science Institute, and the State Association of let's see, the National Association of State Insurance Commissioners are coming together to say we need to build on the Fortify Alabama success to figure out how we replicate that in each of the states. So there are a lot of forces, people that are coming to, and organizations that are coming together to look at how can we better work together, including the insurance companies, to reach, to develop plans that help us reduce our risk and reduce our insurance rates. So I'll go back, Ken, and just throw the ball to you. But my question is, how can we work together across counties with people like you to so that we're not individually recreating a wheel, but we are working together to develop a wheel for the state of California?
Yeah, and I'll keep it short, Rosemarie, so because I know I want to make sure the other panelists can chime in and speak. At the end of the day, I think I'm not recommending we do another task force, but I think I think we need to provide a forum where we can share information and organize something that's organized, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel either, and I don't think anybody does. We learn something every day from others as to what they're doing. So I think we've got to really look at opportunities where we can put a venue together where we can just share and identify subject matter, because we're all struggling with the same pieces. We're making great strides in working with the State Fire Marshal's office and others on building some model defensible space programs. But we'd like others to see that. We want to be able to share what we're doing and hear from others. I think we need to have a better platform for exchanging information and sharing. And every county is different, as we know, but everyone can learn something from someone else.
Ken, Gary or Jaron, do you want to chime in on that?
Well, I'm happy to chime in. Hi, everybody. I'm Jaron. I'm the Tuolumne County 5th District Supervisor. I completely agree with my colleague in Mariposa. Rosemarie has been an inspiration to me. I'm only 3 years into this position. So, Ken, I was not around when you were working on the tree mortality task force, but I have heard and seen all of the work that has been done in our community about that. And it was a huge issue. We had millions of trees die within our county. And being able to handle that, if you ever had to have a tree taken down, I got to get one out of my front yard. It's about $2,000–3,000 per tree. And so when you look at that scale within communities and within, suburbs, I mean, the WUI kind of area, that was such a critical issue. So I really appreciate your work on that. I know we got another colleague on my board who was the staff person at the time that actually worked with you and the governance task force trying to do it. I completely agree with the idea that we have to be working regionally. I always hear the tagline, and it's a trope, but it's true. Fire doesn't care about district boundaries, doesn't care about county boundaries, doesn't care about city-county boundaries, doesn't care what fire district you live in. When I was actually in college way back when, graduated 2010 from our high school here. 2012, the rim fire hit our community, about 260,000 acres. And it was the second largest fire in California's history. I think the first largest was 1933 or 1800. I mean, it's something way back when. And you can call that the beginning of the modern mega fire season, because ever since then, almost every single year without fail, it has been usurped, and it is now somewhere around 12th or 13th within the state. And so we are seeing a rise in catastrophic fire that affects all of our communities, especially across the Central Sierra, but also to include Orange County, Riverside, San Diego. They are not exempt from these types of things. And where we're talking about, equity within the state, and these lower income areas that have seen a lot of devastating changes to, I think, our industry that used to take care of this, a lot of devastating changes to the tribes that used to do tribal burning, that would be managing these systems, and the culpability of who at the end of the day did this and needs to work on it. The fact is, we've got locals at risk. We got a timber industry from the private sector with the actual tools to be able to address a lot of it. We have tribal folks with the knowledge of how to manage these lands, and yet most of it's owned federally, whether it's Yosemite National Park or whether that is, Stanislaus Immigrant National Forest. And all of those entities have to be able to put aside a lot of the bureaucratic boundaries that have been created, get out of the silos, and be able to figure that out. We got a very early warning in Tuolumne County, and we were able to create the Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions Task Force to finally get age-old enemies, right? Who remembers the spotted owl, Get the environmental lobby talking to the timber lobby, to the local government, to the federal government, to be able to negotiate these contracts and say, you know what? If we sue each other to death, nothing gets done. And there is no cost to doing nothing, right? It's easy to do absolutely nothing. Let's just wait for the disaster to happen. But if we work together, we can actually get the funding to come in. We can meet NEPA. We can create local jobs. And we can see projects that at the end of the day are going to keep people safe. And we've been doing a really good job of that here. And I think we've looked across the entire state regarding that, and also tried to provide our own information, our own GIS data framework to say, look, we got, for I don't want to call it like a good thing, but we got an early warning sign. This could have taken out one of our communities. Groveland in my county would have been a paradise, except for the work of our firefighters in being able to defend some of the fuel breaks that were there. From that, we took the warning sign, we picked up the call, we took action on it. And we've done 160,000 acres of fuel reduction ever since. We've been working on biomass plants and secondary materials markets. We've been trying to do multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation planning, make sure that's up to date so we know what to do if the worst happens. And looking at the maintenance plan, the fire hardening. I mean, there are so many things to cover in this. And we're not the ones pioneering all of this. Some of it we are, but we're learning from the rest of the state. We're learning from other areas. And the more we can work together on that to simplify sometimes well-intentioned regulations that have resulted in unnecessary approval steps and expenses, and just get to the focus, which is we got to manage the forest, whether you care about the trees and the animals, and you're looking at the environmental side, you're looking at the human side with the communities that are at risk of this, you're looking at the jobs element of these, the timber industry that has sustained these communities. Whatever your perspective, it's the same answer. People need to work together to find solutions, to be able to get the money, to basically make people safer, create these jobs, and protect the communities that we're talking about and the forests that adjoin them. So I 100% agree with Rosemarie. And I think in the Sierra, we're setting a really good example of, as best we can, how can we, as a local government level that doesn't own these forests, right? They're federally managed, that doesn't kind of have this direct power. What can we do to leverage planning, resources, stewardship agreements, and be able to work together and learn from each other? I think that's an excellent model, and that's what we have to do at the local government level.
Great, thanks. By the way, Jaron gave a great answer to somebody who asked, how do I get involved in this? And his answer was, contact your county supervisor.
Yeah.
Which seemed like oh duh, but every county's different, you know, so you don't know what projects going on or what committees in place. Your county supervisor will know that.
Right.
So.
Well, Corley, I might be throwing stones in a glass house. I'm 32. I'm obviously a lot younger than most of the folks in county level right now. Going on Facebook and liking a post and posting that you're angry, that is not activism. If you want to actually get involved in the solutions of this, you need to show up to the meetings. You need to email your representatives that are tasked with it, that are at these meetings, ask where decisions are being made, and show up. So anybody here that's like, you know what? I have no idea how to get involved. I don't understand this issue. I sold guitar strings before this. Like, I have spent 5 years trying to figure out these impossible issues. There are so many representatives out there that are not doing it for the money, and they're not doing it for the friendly working conditions. They're doing it because they're there to fight for you. And you need to give them the opportunity to put you to work. So if you want to get involved in it, the most precious thing is not the candidates or the people in office. It's these community members who are willing to put in the hours and speak up about this issue and bring it to people that, you know, might have been Ken at one point. It might be the governor, it might be the state legislature, but to tell your stories about it. Ask how you can get involved for the people that know where to put you the best, and then follow through and show up. Decisions are made by the people that show up. And that's a hard fact. You can go share whatever opinions you want online, tell your friends whatever you think, tell your family whatever you think. If you don't show up where decisions are made, you're not going to be heard. And that's a hard truth, and people just need to realize that.
Great. There was also a number of questions about where are the insurance companies on this? Are they partners or are they obstacles? Who wants to take that one?
I vote Gary.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, as I've indicated, I have a lot of respect for Ken, but I'll jump in here feet first and say that and I don't know whether you even knew this, Ken, but under the auspices of the regulations subgroup of the Tree Mortality Task Force, Matthew Reisman put together a subgroup on insurance. So several of the county supervisors
co-chaired, yes.
Yeah, I co-chaired it, but we met with insurance industry representatives for probably a couple years. And I think that we did not make a lot of progress. But what has happened, I think, is that in more recent years, the insurance industry has recognized that they have to be part of the conversation. And I think Insurance Commissioner Lara has made a lot of overtures to them. As I was mentioning earlier, I think the insurance industry is recognizing that if they want to survive, if they want to prosper, that they need to work with organizations like IBHS, Insurance Industry Business and Home Safety, right? Institute for Business and Home Safety, right? So what is critical here is to develop an understanding with respect to standards. When you talk about defensible space, when you talk about the work that you do outside of the 100-foot perimeter, what are the standards to which a homeowner or a community has to work? And we have to get the insurance industry to buy into those standards. So I think they are becoming aware that they have to be part of the solution. I think they are working on, to some extent, with Insurance Commissioner Lara on standards. But I also think that there's a lot more work to do. And that's why the work that Ken is describing and my colleagues is so important, because we need to have the conversation that says from the insurance companies that say, yes, you are doing the right things, you are reducing risk so that we can write policies in your area. Because otherwise we're we lack credibility with our residents, right? Fire wise, God bless them. You can get a 5 to 10. They may give you a 5 to 10% discount. I mean, it's not a strong sales pitch.
So just to add to that, I don't think I would use the word partnership yet for insurance agents, the insurance industry with respect to this, but I think there's a huge amount of potential there for that. And it was kind of like Rosemarie kind of talked about with respect to if the insurance industry can start setting standards and giving discounts for reducing risk and very specific things, that's going to motivate our residents and our property owners to take those actions, right? Which will in turn help make our communities more resilient and more fire safe. And so having the insurance companies kind of drive that, they will be partners if we can get that to happen.
Great.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
we are reaching the witching hour here, but I see Les has got his hand up. So go ahead, Les.
Yeah, I'm going to go into, I know this will surprise some people. I'm going to go into the political area here a little bit. After 9/11, the commission found that one of the problems we had was people didn't share information. FBI, CIA, Border Patrol, whatnot. Lots of things, but that wasn't a big issue. Seems to me this issue illustrates the same problem, right? That people, agencies not talking to one another. So it's not just about org charts, it's about human behavior and how we get people to talk to one another and share information. And they shouldn't be forced to, but I don't know how we do that. But a question, and this may be controversial, we went through this problem with COVID and people resisting social distancing, masking, vaccine, whatnot. It was quite a movement. We're talking about defensible space here, other mitigation steps. That's going to require people to cooperate and go along with in support of the larger public good, health and safety. So what, I guess, Ken, I'll throw this to you. What on the communication side, what's been done to bring people along? Because I sense there will be resistance to this in the same way there was around the COVID mitigation steps.
No, and the short answer is absolutely. There's always going to be resistance as we're trying to make change. As in El Dorado County, we're just providing an update to our existing ordinance, an ordinance that really mirrors the existing state laws. We're really, though, trying to focus, and this is where the rubber meets the road. Not trying to be a heavy-handed approach. We're trying to focus on education and provide assistance and build the trust with the community. But you've got to have that resource for those bad actors that truly don't want to participate and are jeopardizing their neighbors. To do it, you've got to build trust. And that's where this is we're really trying to say all the things you've all just said. Defensible space is everyone's role. Building trust doesn't come from mandating. It comes from bringing people to the table, and go right back to what Jaron talked about with when the Yes Group formed to address those issues. The kinds of things we're still struggling with, PG&E. We've got folks that really want to engage, but their vegetation management program is managed in San Francisco, and their vegetation coordinator in El Dorado County has no authority to engage and move project funds, and he wants to participate. And so we're trying to find ways to work through. Those are some of the kind of challenges that we're facing. The other agencies are willing to share. I think it's changing a mindset that you don't have to just keep doing this by yourself. Share your information. Let's work on it together. And there are barriers to some, but in the big picture, it's more just a cultural change that we're trying to get people to make. And that starts right at the grassroots level with our smallest fire safe councils. Everybody wants their piece of the pie, and they don't see the big 50,000-foot picture. So it's trying to bring everybody along together to recognize the greater good, while at the same time, how do we help these individual communities? It's just a change, and it's just going to take time building trust and repeating the exact same information, consistently.
Right.
Well, I promised everybody we'd be done by 7, but Jaron has his hand up, so I think I do need to let him ask, chime in here.
Thanks, Corley. I appreciate it. And I really like that, Ken. I really do. I think we face so many issues that people just frankly don't understand. We don't really teach how these processes happen anymore. I was 2 years into a college degree before I ever got anything talking about a local government course. And local government, at the end of the day, affects you probably more than whoever president like is, in office. And we spend very little of our energy and our attention kind of there. And so to me, it's being able to explain this stuff in a way that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, it just makes sense. The fact that for tens of thousands of years, 10,000 years probably, this was a managed system by indigenous burning. It was a human intervened system that adapted to that type of landscape, from natural ignition. Sorry, I got my cat attacking me right now. Natural ignitions to human caused ignitions and tribal burning. In 1930s, you saw that from the federal government. People were being shot for causing tribal wildfires. It was a serious allegation. And at around the same time, we had the Tillamook fire. It was something like 300,000 acres in Oregon that sent a shock wave across the nation of saying, oh my God, we have to absolutely stop this stuff, originating in the 10 a.m. policy, right? Next day, we are gonna put out every fire by 10 a.m. because fire is bad. And not recognizing that fire has this important element in the ecosystem. And by removing it, we have allowed 2.4 to 10 times the fuel load to build up in an area like mine. And so when you end up with a fire coming into one of the Sierra Nevada kind of communities, a fire adapted community that's not like it is up on the East Coast or down in the American South, but relies on this carbon cycle to recycle a lot of this fuel, and it's built up over time. That is why we're getting type shift. We're getting timber stand altering type fires that once the forest burns down, it's not a nice fire going through that kind of cleans up everything. It's done. It won't be a forest again, maybe for thousands of years, maybe never, because the brush that grows back will outcompete the trees. And suddenly you've got this ecological shift. And I think we're finally seeing that where the state has set very ambitious climate goals, but those goals have not accounted for what is coming from these, I would say, man-made circumstances related natural events, so wildfire. And we had a study that came out from the University of California, Berkeley, and University of Chicago that showed wildfires in the state emitted effectively 20 years of all the carbon cuts, carbon emission reductions within the state in one single year because of all of this mismanagement. And so I think the key is, can we get people to understand this? Can we get the others who maybe don't face it in the same way? A fire happens, I breathe the smoke. How do we get it to the schools in the Central Valley? How do we get it to San Francisco and LA that have the political power that may say, you know what, probably shouldn't live there, it's too risky. And say, look, these forests are the watershed for the water that is provided to your county. These are huge ecologically important areas of the state for biodiversity. And there's communities up there that you should care about. And if none of that matters, if it burns down, it will be far more expensive to have to salvage log, replant, manage, and replace than it ever would be to be able to fix it in the first place. And so I think that's the pitch we have to make, because if you add up all the 10 counties that Rosemarie outlined from the Tree Mortality Task Force, we are a rounding error on the state population as far as political power, votes, anything like that. We have to be able to make this pitch to urban audiences of here are all the things we're doing, whether it is fire safe communities, it's the biomass green hydrogen plants, it's the logging that we're working on to bring here with some of the jobs, it's the building materials out of these, renewable wood resources, whatever it is, to be able to get them on board with saying, you know what, we can't let these forests burn down. We accept some of the responsibility that we created this situation. It's not purely climate change. It's not purely a natural cycle. This is a man-made cycle that can be addressed. And we need to put public resources into fixing this. And this is where I think the accountability comes in, is we have, not right now, $60 billion deficit, depending on LAO or kind of the governor's efforts, but we had $100 billion surplus at one point. The state is one of the richest places in the entire United States. And we also have a federal government that owns the liability of this issue. So we should have the resources to be able to, I think, address this issue, but it needs local voices speaking up. I know that local government leaders, including the one that I replaced, ones that predated me, we've been making this argument. And so anybody that's on here, we need folks that are in these other areas that have more people, frankly, more money, more voice, to be able to say that this is an important issue and you need to listen to these communities. And we need experts like Ken that are able to say, you know what, the science is not, and I don't mean to speak for you, Ken, the science is not so clear as this one thing that you're doing is going to fix it. This is going to take building a workforce. This is going to take building a timber infrastructure. This is going to take a multi-partner stewardship agreement to get all of these entities working together. This is going to create, cutting a lot of the red tape on these projects happening. This is going to take carbon credits, and it's going to take industry. I mean, it's going to take so many different things. And so anybody that has a silver bullet is wrong. They're 100% wrong. But people need to understand how this stuff is created and then show up to those meetings and get involved. And then they need to go get their friends in the Bay Area and Sacramento and LA to say the same thing to their legislators, because it's all of our state and it's all of our country. And just because it's not our local issue doesn't mean we don't need to fix it. So.
Well, and that's a great summary, and I think we're going to call that the summary for this because we could keep going. I'll just point out that I think San Francisco does enjoy Tuolumne River water, and they probably want it to stay as clean and pure as it is.
Oh yeah, they do.
So,
they love the rate.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I cut you off.
I was just saying they love the rates too. The price point's very good.
Well, that's the legacy of water in California, that's for sure. Any rate, I appreciate everybody's time. This has been a wonderful and fascinating discussion. Thanks to all the participants that joined in. We will send out a follow-up email. We'll get a recording this, so it will, once we get it in shape to be shared, we'll get something out to let you know how you can re-listen to the recording. And Ken will get your slide deck and make that available to people as well. So with that, thank you all for chiming in, and thank you for supporting Sarah Ford. And we look forward to seeing everybody on the next town hall meeting. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Safe travels.